Welcome back into the Ohio MMA podcast. I am your host, David McKinney. Joining me on today's show, Mr. Melvin Awesome Harris. Man, what's up?
What's up, sir? How you doing?
Doing great, man. So you are back in the cage at Ohio Combat League 31, a professional welterweight bout against Omoyele Gonzalez, man. So yeah, wrapping up the training. Got about a week to go before the fight. How's training camp been going? And I know we actually called the last OCL show, and you were like itching for a fight. So I'm sure you got to be excited to get back in there.
Oh man, I had definitely been itching. That's the right word to use there. Um, Training's been going great. We had some good camp. Had a good amount of time going on it. Um, but a guy like him, he's got some danger to him. So it adds to the factor, make me want to train even harder and dot all my I's and cross all my T's. So I'm really excited. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you always got to take a second look when you're facing the guy's nickname is Kill Switch. that's a that's a crazy nickname. Now, you don't just like get that nickname. I mean, hopefully he didn't give it to himself, but
And you never know.
so you're back on OCL, man. This is actually your first time fighting for OCL in almost a year. I guess like 10 months. What's it like being able to fight closer to home? Because you've traveled a little bit. You've been, I know you were out in. I think your Muay Thai fight was in Philly. You were up in Northeast Ohio. What's it like being able to get a chance to fight back closer to home?
Oh man, I love fighting at home. I get a little more people out for me. It's a little easier. It's just easier all around, really. I get to make weight, and I know where to go, and I know what to eat, and it's much more of a weight off me. When it comes to you get cut, you weigh in, you get to go do it. You sleep in your own bed. Oh man, there's nothing like that.
That's always a huge advantage, and it's interesting because I feel like a lot of guys say like I like to fight on as the away guy because it takes all the distractions away, right? It takes away the having to deal with tickets and all your family and friends, and you just get to go and think about fighting. It sounds like you're the kind of the opposite, where you're like, I want to be in my comfort zone, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really I don't worry about all the ticket stuff. I don't do too much about it, but it's easier for me to just be at home and I mean realistically I'll fight anywhere, don't get me wrong, but I prefer it. I've done it many times at different places. I prefer being at the house.
And let's talk about many times different places because you are such a, I mean, you MMA fighter and you got an MMA fight coming up, but you've been active in just about every combat sport that there is. You've had boxing, you've had pro Muay Thai, pro grappling, pro kickboxing. Uh, I think if there's anything else, I don't know what else, what else there is. But what's your kind of philosophy of staying active in not just MMA, but taking fights in every discipline?
Well, as you know, man, MMA stands for mixed martial arts. So I've always approached it. I want to be I want to be competent in every facet that we have. Um, I'm trying to be a true martial artist in that aspect, and then I I enjoy doing all the like having I guess what you call stipulations on it. I enjoy having it. I can only strike. I can only punch. I can only punch and kick. I can punch, kick, throw elbows. Now I can only do jujitsu. Right. Now I can do them all. So I like the challenge of each one of those things individually, and then I also love the ability and the challenge of bringing them all together and marrying them all. That's always been a huge. I've always loved it. I just like the combat arts, and that's one of those things where I just enjoy it.
Yeah. And one thing I actually just noticed in looking at your record, you're actually 3-0 for OCL as a pro. You got
Oh
two
wow.
MMA wins and one boxing win. So I definitely feel like you got to like the home cooking. I feel like that just stamps puts a stamp on that, right?
I like the sound of that. Hey, let's do it for.
Yeah, so you actually, unfortunately are coming in off of a loss, and it's interesting you fought, your 2 pro MMA losses are both guys from the same gym,
Same place,
from
man.
both from Route 250, Brogan Andres and Hunter Watt. Tell me about the last fight. I watched it, but kind of break it down. What was your, you lost a decision to a really tough guy. He's now 2-0, and he's actually looking to go 3-0 this weekend, but you faced a super tough guy. What did you feel like in the fight, and have you changed anything heading up into this next one?
Oh, 100%. Hunter was no slouch. He neither one of them really. They that gym they got good grappling bases. And uh, and for me, it's always my approach. How I approach it, not so much what they could do, but kind of I limit myself sometimes. You know, I'm still working on the mental aspect of this game. I'm not going to shy away from it. Sometimes I'm like, man, they gonna come out ready to wrestle. I gotta be ready to wrestle too. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. I enjoy wrestling. I enjoy doing jujitsu. But you know, sometimes I get away from. I start thinking about what they're gonna do versus what Melvin needs to do. And if I start getting a little bit better at doing what Melvin needs to do, we'll be all right. I think we'll find a lot more success there. But he fought his fight. He did a good job. I knew he was going to come decent cardio and a good wrestling base. That's his mo. And he came out. He did a good job. He started quicker than me, and unfortunately, I just kind of ran out of time. I think so.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
is
and
what it is.
yeah, I mean that's the I think the big thing too though is that looking at your record, it seems like you don't really worry about record too much, like in terms of like you're just facing the toughest guys you possibly can. I mean, a lot of it's probably whoever you can get to fight, and it happens to be the toughest guys. But like your record, you're not even going back to your amateur career. I mean, you fought Alonzo Turner, who's now 5-0 as a pro. You fought multiple guys as an amateur who are now pros. You've never shied away from a tough fight, and I feel like Ronin, your gym in general, that's kind of what you guys are really known for. Do you kind of like think about it that way, or do you just think, hey, I'm just gonna fight anybody because it's so hard to get fights?
Yeah, man. I don't really. I'm not ever trying to really shy away from nobody. It's everyone's a different experience, and they're and I talk about that all the time. Sometimes some of the guys they'll be like, "Well, you need to take maybe a couple easier fights." I'm like, "Who? Who's an easier fight?" I'm gonna take whoever wants to fight with me. At some point, I try to be as active as I possibly can. Like you said, I do a bunch. I try to do as many different arts as I can. This year, I was really trying to focus harder on MMA, and and so I set some other things aside, and I just haven't had a lot of success. Well, I'm finally a person that's willing to stand across from me and let's do this thing. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's just the luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know. I wish. I'm sure a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, I wish I love an easier fight," but it just don't happen that way for me. Everybody I fight is just gonna be kind of dangerous, and we got to do what we got to do. I guess that speaks volumes for me.
yeah, and one thing too that I've kind of switching gears a little bit. You talked about the different aspects of martial arts, and one thing I feel like a lot of fighters are really enjoying is actually having the ability to compete in other arts. Like 10 years ago, there weren't pro Muay Thai fights in the U.S. or pro kickboxing. There was some
Yeah,
grappling, but it's continued to expand, and that's the interesting thing that I feel like I've seen now that we're like 30 years past when the UFC started, and I feel like a lot of fighters are gravitating, as you said, back toward that. Like, let me go and just test myself in one art, and or in Muay Thai, or just in striking, or just in boxing, or just in kickboxing, or just grappling. And I feel like we're almost kind of seeing like the peeling of the onion back, right, from a lot of fighters, because the fighters that I see that are most successful are the guys that are competing in multiple aspects. And you're like, well, if you want to do MMA, why would you do boxing? It's like, well, that's a huge aspect of boxing, right? And it's different, and being able to translate that to MMA makes you better. But what do you feel like, being able to have, there's a kickboxing show up in Northeast Ohio, Extreme Kickboxing. You fought
Mhm.
on CFFC, but what do you feel like the I guess the growth of the other sports? And I think some of it too is the American fans are starting to appreciate a lot of the other arts a little bit more, and now you're seeing more shows.
1000%.
Because I remember when I was a kid watching the old school like K1 on ESPN2, and I'm like, man, this would be so cool if it was in America, but it was always in like Netherlands or Japan,
Yep.
and like now we're getting more of it in the US.
I mean, you have those countries like you say, the Netherlands and like Holland and things of that nature, where they really they embraced it early. Well, hell, you have guys that we do drills that are called Dutch drills. And so especially in that kickboxing realm, so they embraced it earlier. And as a person, I've been watching fighting sports as long as I can possibly remember, and yeah, I'm happy. Like I was so excited to be on a pro Muay Thai card in America. Like it's such a rare opportunity, and I was so excited about it, and I was like, just to be a part of it. Like all the other things aside, I was like, this is awesome. Like it's relatively close to home. Like it is
Yeah,
home almost. So like you're saying, like it's fun to watch like America start to kind of bump those things up, and then you got the sport of like jujitsu, for example, which is just completely exploded. Um, you got all sorts of the ADCCs and the Craig Jones Invitationals and all these other like large like IBJJFs and things that are worldwide and
yeah.
fostering the biggest talents, and it's huge. It's just amazing to watch. Like when it was so limited, and now it's just there's almost too many things to do.
Yeah.
Like
And so you actually, as I briefly mentioned, you actually called the last OCL show with me back in June.
yeah,
And one thing I always like it, in having fighters who are pros is like I'm just mostly a fan, and I like to watch it, and I've done the commentary aspect of it. I can do the play by play, but seeing the way that a fighter's mind can pick apart, and be able to dissect and describe what's happening in the cage. I feel like you did a really good job at doing that. And the funny thing is, your teammate Max Metzger, I feel like, is kind of the same way too. Are you like that guy that's always watching tape and always watching fights and kind of
oh,
picking it apart and dissecting it? And like, what did you think about doing? I think you've done commentary a couple times, but how do you feel like being on that side of it? I mean, it's nice not getting punched, right? But outside of that, what how did you like doing the commentary?
I loved it. That was actually the first time I've ever done commentary. Um, and I loved it. I was like, this was actually really fun. I mean, I know, like you're saying, like I know what those guys are feeling. I know what they're thinking. I know, like I can sometimes see their mindset before they even know where they're going. Like I'm like, oh, I know what he's about to do, and then just trying to articulate that into words for some of the casual viewers or even some of the guys that are even more experienced. I want to just to try to bring the same level of enjoyment that I have of watching this, to someone else. I want them to be excited as well. And so that was an experience, and it was awesome. I loved it. I appreciate you for saying I did that all right.
Yeah, I
um,
mean, I feel like it is interesting, like the just being able to like break it down, and you're like, man, this guy, like, I can tell you are a student of the game versus like I just go out and fight, right? Like you actually are, studying these techniques, and aside from like, obviously the mental side of it is, I feel like a lot of fighters can think of that, but the actually being able to study and you can tell like, hey, this guy actually is serious about his craft and is passionate about this versus it's like, I mean, obviously you're a pro fighter, so that goes without saying, but there's like a level beyond that, and it's like hard to like articulate of like you just know what you're talking about. I think is the easiest way to say it, and then being able to translate that to words because sometimes you can get caught up in like just watching the fight, right? But you always got to remember like you have to be able to translate that from like your eyeballs to your brain to your mouth, right? And
Yeah, that was my biggest fear is I'll just be sitting there watching stuff and not saying anything. Like I was like, oh yeah, let's talk about this real quick. And I enjoy it. I mean, we do it. I do it here in the gym. I love helping guys break down film upon opponents, things that they do, the recognizing patterns. Those are some of my strong points. in my own personal journey, and I love trying to help even just my teammates in general. I love trying to help my teammates any possible way I can.
Yeah.
I love that they kind of trust me to listen and kind of and go what I say sometimes.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I've noticed too, I feel like you are a little bit one of the elder statesmen. Like you've been around the block a few times at Ronin, and there's a like multiple crops of like it feels like it's like a recruiting classes almost of like
100%.
and then
Yeah.
like you've got the guys who are now like just becoming pros like Mark Antonelli and Max
Mm,
Metzger and Skylar and Asher and all those guys that are like that level, and then now there's the next crop, and you're like, holy man, these guys are like it's fascinating to see the level of talent at like man, like nothing against any of those guys, but some of the talent level, you're like, man, how is this level of talent coming out of the out of someone that's like 21, 20 years old? Who do you work with? Is there anyone in particular that you're like, man, like this guy's going to be special and be a stud in the future?
I like to first say that is like you were saying, we got this younger crop of talent. What it is, I mean, it's our coaching. We got
We're not allowed to give Josh any credit on this show,
yeah,
so
our coaching is, but it's not even. It's not so much. It's Josh is who he is. It's that he has been adapting, and he's been adapting the way he trains, the way he coaches, to the way we train, and that has been such a pivotal thing for all of us, myself included. One of the older guys, I didn't wrestle my whole life, like, and some of these guys have wrestled. They've been wrestling forever, right?
yeah.
They had to learn how to strike or things of that nature.
What do you
Like I've
say?
been
The
striking.
wrestling head, right? Wrestling
Yeah, I've
head.
been striking a while, but these guys have been doing grappling arts, you know, for so long. Grappling comes a lot easier to them, and so we had to learn, like, how do we mesh all the different skill sets that we all have from our previous lives into being just better mixed martial artists for each other, to the iron sharpen iron. And then just him as a coach, he just kind of was like, how how do I approach this coaching so it's the most I'm getting the most bang for my buck as well, because the old style MMA was, you go in there, you go hard, 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 hard,
Yes.
hard, hard.
Yeah.
You go hard, you train hard so you can fight hard. Well, that's not the same case anymore. It's, you want a long career, you want longevity. You can't just go hard, 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 hard all the time. So we've he's adopted this training method, and it's paying off. We're seeing dividends with these younger guys, even in their weak areas, how fast they're accelerating and getting better, which is just the course of MMA in general. You're just seeing better people, more well-rounded guys, all the way up to the top levels. Um,
Yeah.
so, and then we have a beginners class. You got Ryan Benedetto, who's in there, who will also be in my corner this week, like next weekend. So he's been uh, heavily involved with those beginner guys. So those guys, those new amateurs, and the other newer guys you're going to see come out of Ronin, they're going to be. It's the same method. So he comes, he watches, he learns how to be a better coach himself. And so we already are starting to get some of these younger cats just starting off at a level that's ugh,
Yeah.
ugh.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a hard time finding fights for some people.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about Josh and the kind of the old school days of just training hard and I got a little taste of that when I at the old school Buckeye MMA, a little
Yeah.
taste of like maybe
Oh
like
my God.
1% of that, and like it was train hard and just like beat the crap out of each other, and we're gonna go and be tougher than the guys across the cage from us, and it worked for a long, long time with Josh at
Yeah.
Buckeye, and now you're seeing him even kind of go to the next level. But the one thing I wanted to point out, because I've always wanted to tell this, is on for Ronin when Luke Zachridge started the gym, like talking to him and kind of the genesis of the gym, and he said, I felt like I never really had a home as a, that's why he came up with the name Ronin. And he said, I always had to go and find the best coaches in different areas, right? As he continued to get, go up through his career. And he said, I wanted to be able to bring in the best coaches in my gym from the beginning. And the fascinating thing is, most of the coaches that were there that started a decade ago are still there. Like Vitor
Yeah.
Oliveira is still there. Josh started a little bit after kind of the beginning,
Hmm.
but I don't know if Chad Van Sickle's still there, but I know the Muay Thai coach
Boggs, Aaron Boggs.
Aaron Boggs is still there. So
Hmm.
seeing the that longevity of coaches, like there's only a few like gyms in Ohio where it's like it truly is a gym with like true coaches, high level world class coaches. Like you think like Strong Style, you guys, Vision a little bit down in Cincinnati. Like there's not a lot of gyms in this area where it's truly like a world class training camp, and you get the best possible coaching from every aspect and every corner of MMA. And if you only want to do kickboxing or striking, we've got that. Or if you only want to do grappling, they have that as well. So that was I thought always interesting, and it's very really it's cool to see it like a decade later after Luke starting the gym and how it's kind of continued to just evolve and get better, and like what his original vision was is now like come to fruition, and that's the thing too. And how much of it do you like look at? So one of the things too that I noticed, I mean, I always think about this. Brian Rogers back in the day was like, man, if you want to fight on the local level and prove that you're ready to go to the next level, you got to be dominating these guys on this level. How much of that do you like take into account where you're like, I'm not just trying to go by and get in and eke out a fight. Especially like the amateurs, right? Like most of your amateurs are dominant on the, and if they're not dominant, it's because they took a super tough fight. Like Ethan Shirk just took a fight against a wrestling national champion. You're like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
he got. But I'm sure he got infinitely better in that fight because he said, hey, I know exactly where my weaknesses are and where I can get better. And it's like now I'm scared of what we're gonna see him coming forward. But how much of that do you kind of play in like, hey, you got to be dominant in these fights where it's like to be able to prove and kind of level up and get to the next stage?
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, that's such a huge thing now. I mean, as you look from the top down, I guess you got like the contender series things. You just using that as an example since it was one of the most recent things I watched. You have all these supplemental channels to try to get you up to to one of these big shows, that we call them. You got LFAs, you got just CFFCs, or all these other little shows that you'll see on a UFC Fight Pass or something like that. Well, you gotta really make a splash in those shows, and really build yourself and build a name for yourself here, just in America, to really, yeah, you gotta dominate. It's really all it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
you really you want that. You want the fan base. But really, what speaks for it is how are you winning these fights, and it's hard. I mean, again, people are getting better, and uh, it's a hard thing to do, but that's the course. I mean, that's what people want to see. They want to see the dominant guy. They want to see a Chimaev, where they come
Yeah.
out there and they just run through people's faces, and that's the guy. And you got to do your best version of that on a regional scene to be brought up to that next world stage on any fast track, uh, by any means.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You brought up contender series. The first week just happened, and four of the
mm,
five guys got finishes, and those four got contracts, and the guy who went to a decision did not. So
yep.
that is always interesting. But talking about that, you talk about the next level and next stage. Where's your kind of mindset being? I know, you're getting you're on the wrong side of 30, just like me. But what's your like ultimate goal in the sport of like? Do you want to just be able to look back and say like I had a really good pro career? Do you want to get to the next level, world champion? Like where do you want to eventually be? Do you what's that kind of North Star goal for you?
For me personally, I mean, I'm a realistic guy. So, like you said, I'm on that 30 side. So, uh, it, I started late. It is what it is. But uh, first goal, I just to make it. I would like to make it to one of these big shows. That would be my ultimate goal. I'm not gonna start here and be like I'm about to be a UFC welterweight world champion or anything crazy like that. There's steps to that, So for me, I'm a step by step person, and then my goals change as they get accomplished, I guess, or something like that. So for me, it would be I just want to know I could have made it. Like that would be. that I could make it. That I was among those guys, and I was like, dang, I was good enough. This is cool. Like that right now is my goal. If I could make it to a big show, whether that be a PFL, a UFC, I was gonna say belt, I won, I would even do that. Like it would just be nice to be like, hey, I was in the realm. I was there.
Yeah.
I got to I could taste some real competition and I could hang, you know. Uh
Yeah. I feel like your fighting style would really lend its hand to one championship. I mean, you can do MMA, you can do Muay Thai, kickboxing.
oh,
They've like
be
really
awesome.
embraced everything.
I would do everything. I would do everything. They do grappling, they do Muay Thai, they do the mixed show. I would do everything. It would
Yeah.
be so cool.
There's actually, and following a lot of regional MMA, there's a promotion out in Colorado called Sparta, and they do one night tournaments where it's the first round is boxing, the second round is kickboxing, and the third round is MMA. And they've
What?
done a bunch of, they've done pro stuff. They call it the King of Sparta. So it's a one night tournament, so throwback but different. And I'm like, you're the guy that needs to be in that. So
That is
yeah,
awesome. I'm gonna look that up immediately after this.
yeah, look
That,
up Sparta. They're out in Denver area, and I'm like, you're the guy that needs to be in that because I
yeah,
feel like
that
you
would
have
be
the skill set.
that is right in my wheelhouse. We can do it all one day. That would be cool. That would be
Um,
so cool.
yeah, so I know you're originally from Oklahoma, right?
I am from Oklahoma.
Yeah. So how did an Oklahoma boy get up to Ohio originally? How'd you make your
Um,
way up?
well, my so I went to college at Purdue, and while I was there, in Indiana, and while I was there, my mom got married, and she moved up to Cleveland, Akron area, and so the first MMA gym I ever stepped into was Strong Style. Since you ever mentioned it, she didn't. She lived
Yeah.
a little about 40 minutes away from there, so that was the first MMA, I would say, big MMA gym I ever stepped into. Um, and so I was like, "Oh, this is pretty neat." That's when I first moved to Ohio. So she got married. I was still finishing school. I came here to basically to finish to Ohio to finish, so I can keep in-state tuition since I paid for school myself. So that's how I ended up in Ohio. And,
But
and
yeah.
I went to Strong Style. I was like, this place is pretty neat. These guys are nuts. Let's try this stuff. And then I fell in love. And then I was like, well, I'm not gonna stay in Cleveland. I went to Ohio State for a little bit, and so I eventually finished school here out of Columbus, and then I just stayed. And then I found Ronin, and that's where I've been at.
Awesome. Yeah. It's that's a cool story. Making your way and finding your way and finding your spot in the world, right? That's always what I'm interested in. But yeah, man, you got coming up. I mean, this is fantastic card. I'm sad I'm not going to be there. It's actually, I feel like the shows I can't make are always the best OCL shows. So guaranteed to be a great show. But OCL Ohio Combat League 31. Going down August 24th in Columbus, back at Kimba Live, which is an awesome venue
Oh
for
yeah,
MMA.
I
For the
love
first
fighting
time
there.
in yeah, for the first time in a while, you got yourself as in a pro fight, Max Metzger, your teammate in a pro fight, and your other teammate Mark Antonelli in
Mm-hmm.
another pro fight, and then the main event. This one, man, I'm hoping you better
Oh
hope that if you like striking, because I know you do,
yeah,
Jeremy Henry and Ilyas Mamadaliev, like that's one I
such
feel
a
like
good fight.
yes,
Such a good main event fight.
yeah. And Jeremy's been like the spoiler in Ohio. I think he's undefeated for OCL dating back to his
He's
his
been
amateur
doing
days.
work, but
Yeah.
that's a bad man right there. He's been doing work.
Yeah, and comes in, he just rolls through all the Ohio guys. His last 2 wins are over Ohio guys, but,
They are.
um, the he, faces Ilyas, and I'm calling it right now. I think the winner of this, you're gonna see in a big show, big fight,
Oh,
after this one, so just for
100%.
the
They both got the record, and they got they got what they need to make it up. I could easily see them, either one of them boys, moving on to the next a big show for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. You can watch it like me. You have to watch it on Combat Sports now,
Hmm.
but Yeah, August 24th, Melvin Harris back in. You're facing Omoyele Gonzalez. I think I got that right, but that's gonna
Yes,
be a great
Lord.
fight too. So, yeah, thanks so much, man, for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me, brother.
All right, we'll be back next week with another episode.